Sorry, I hope it's not too naive a question because I see that the level of people here who know about this is maybe more than mine. But one of the things that I'm very interested in is history and find the links between the present and the past. And my understanding of torture, I mean, and you can apply even this to the Inquisition torture, is not to get information, but to obtain the submission of a collectivity of people, all right? And this experimentation, because it was not only a torture program, was already in the 60s and 70s through the School of the Americas in all, and it was clearly, I mean, Dan Mitrione was making experimentations with homeless people, etc., and obviously that was something organized from the government. Can you find links between those people then and these now? Where is, because it is probably something that comes from the Cold War, and it has been a total link. And sorry, and the last thing, I think that, you know, in Nuremberg, every judge who consented torture was judged, and very well judged. And I think we need a new Nuremberg. And for these kind of things, we need to put everything we know in the out, everything with names and so on. But please, I would like to know the links.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Well, there are many, many links. One of the first ones that comes to mind is a man by the name of Henry Kissinger, who was a master, one of the masterminds of Operation Condor, which was a South American and Latin American-wide torture and kidnapping program of massive state repression among numerous Latin American states, who ran their communications between states through NSA facilities, for instance. And Henry Kissinger, of course, was very instrumental in the coup against Allende in Chile, and backing and supporting that country. So he, by the way, what's the link? Well, just the other day, Henry Kissinger was a guest of the Obama White House at a State Department affair discussing the history of the war in Southeast Asia. Henry Kissinger, of course, if many of you remember, was an architect of the mass bombing in Southeast Asia and a mass murderer. Did you have something to add?
No, yes, because Kissinger, actually, one of the few things that I felt very proud was that in my country he could not go in because he would have been arrested by Judge Garzón. And Judge Garzón, when he started to investigate the Franco regime, of course, which is the most terrible because there has been nothing, and I'm the daughter of Franco resistors, so I know what I'm talking about. He has been completely put out of office by those people. So there is even, I'm sure there is an international link. I mean, Thatcher obviously moves all her wings when Pinochet and the Franco, and he is one of the people that is starting the international law, which is one of the tools that we have to use, you know.
I suggest, again, I would not be surprised if the, although it could certainly have been just the phalangists against Garzón, but the United States through NATO and Britain ran an operation called Operation Gladio in Europe, which was involved in most European countries after World War II, left stay-behind armies, had major contacts in all the intelligence companies, and they had it in Spain as well, and in Italy, and in Belgium, and in France, and in Greece, and in Sweden, anyway, on and on. And my guess is that, you know, certainly if you're looking for links again, it's possible that Gladio-related operation was going on against Garzón. I do, before I go and take a chance, I hate to open up something and we can talk afterwards, but I do want to say it is a legitimate position, and I know that Captain Kearns knows this from Drus Mirlu's book that we discussed, that there were some people within the CIA and MKUltra, perhaps the military, I don't know, who didn't think that the SEER schools were a good idea for their own reasons. And there was one of them, a Dutch psychiatrist by the name of Drus Mirlu, psychoanalyst, who predicted in 1956 or so that the reverse engineering of these type of things could come about to be used for torture. So it's a legitimate position. I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
But it's important to understand that Captain Kearns, the vast majority of people who went through the SEER program as constituted, were not torturers. They believed that they were there precisely for the reason and mission Andy said. And that is, in fact, what they did for the most part. But whether it was right to have that program is a legitimate question. But it didn't turn into what it did until the Bush people took it.
Yes, I also just want to add that, with this issues that we're raising in the story, certainly, it's not new per se. It's new as it relates to putting it out there, but this has been going on, as Jeff said, for quite a while.
Quickly, here's something to research. Did Mr. Obama have previous acquaintance with Mr. Kissinger? That's all I want to put out. Give it to somebody else.
Noted.
I know that the story that you wrote yesterday was big news to people who have been following these questions, and certainly those of us who have organized the events this week have been thinking, well, there was an urgent need for this week, something like this week, to bring together the different strands of information and people working on this. My question is simply this, connected to that week, what have you heard from the New York Times and the Washington Post since the story broke yesterday? I'm curious if...
Oh, they're on vacation this week. Everyone at the New York Times, Washington Post, they're all on vacation. Part of I'll touch on it briefly, is that having worked in the mainstream outlets, I formerly worked for the Los Angeles Times. I worked for Dow Jones Newswires, which was part of the Wall Street Journal. And that was back right around, right before 9/11, and I've been told, or was told, that things changed after 9/11. The point being that putting stories like this out there just sort of became much more difficult. But knowing various people at these news organizations, and I actually had this conversation last night with Kurt over here, that they basically have said, some of the reports to me personally, that it's a non-issue. It's done. Unless you have Dick Cheney in the headline, or if you can produce the smoking gun that Dick Cheney, actually administered some waterboarding. And most of the reporters, frankly, I mean, the Associated Press has done some good work. If we're talking about this past summer with some of the things that they revealed, but on something like this, it's largely, ignored. But I have to say that I'm not going to just place blame on the New York Times or the Washington Post. Our own peers out there, and Jeff and I have been discussing this. It's not a criticism. I know that a criticism in the sense that everyone is doing has their own work to do, but it also has not been picked up by others. In the sort of collective, whether it's the progressive news sphere, so to speak, or other places just to sort of discuss it. So, certainly the New York Times, Washington Post, they don't pay attention, but to something like this. But at the same time, some of the more independent outlets, news organizations as well, have sort of turned a blind eye and deaf ear to this. And there are very, very few you can count on one hand who are actually doing this consistently. Kurt?
Yeah, I'm really curious whether, as journalists, you find, even with this story, that as one person speaks, that others are willing to open up? If that's the case or not?
Yes, in fact, I was telling this to Jeff as we were putting the story together, that that's exactly what happened. And during the course, there's a piece of information in the story, as a matter of fact, that as I was making some phone calls in terms of obtaining information from several sources, that they put me in touch with some other people to be able to obtain that. But the publication of the story definitely has resulted in that. And I found that in many instances with stories in the past, that it does open that door, and those people can feel that they can trust you.
Remind Jason, just briefly, he might remember, way back 7 months ago or so, 6 months ago, we talked about this, yeah. And we were trying to reach out to talk to people about the Wolfowitz directive, and no one would talk to us. We'd get on the telephone and go, nobody wants to talk. Nobody will return our calls. This is weird. People who ordinarily, it was very shut. This was people were frightened to talk about this. And that, of course, told us there's something going on here. People don't shut up for no reason.